Welcome to the Lincoln City Council meeting of February 28th, 2022. In accordance with LB 898, please be advised that a copy of the Opens Meeting Act is posted at the back of the chamber by the northwest door. Let us all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a brief period of silent meditation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The order of business of the City Council is as follows. The clerk will call the items listed on the agenda. Under public hearing, anyone wishing to speak on an item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The council shall require any member of the public desiring to address the council to identify themselves, the name of an organization or group, including an address that you may be representing by such person or group, unless the address requirement is waived to protect the security of the individual. The applicant may then make one short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating their name, address, organization, or group, and whether you are speaking in favor of or in opposition to the item. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearings, the council will vote on resolutions and items listed under third reading. On the second and last Mondays of the month, immediately prior to adjournment, anyone may speak on any issue not on the agenda for that date nor planned for the future agenda. Will the clerk please call the first item of business?
Our first item of business today is our consent agenda, sections 1 and 2.
Is there anyone here that would like to speak on items 1 or 2? Is there anyone here that would like to speak on items 1 or 2? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on.
We can now vote on these items. Item 1A is approving the distribution of funds representing interest earnings on short-term investments of idle funds during the month ended December 31st, 2021, introduced by Shob.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilman Beckius. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Raybold.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Shob.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Beckius.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 2A was introduced by Shob.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilwoman Washington. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Washington.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Raybold.
Yes.
Beckius.
Yes.
Shob.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. We will now move on to section 4, our public hearing liquor resolutions. Item 4A is application of McKinney's Pub LLC doing business as McKinney's Irish Pub for a special designated license to cover an outdoor area measuring approximately 60 feet by 120 feet on P Street between 7th to 8th Streets on March 17th, 2021 from 8 a.m. to 11:55 p.m.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about your application?
I'm sorry.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about your application?
It's basically the same thing we've done for a number of years. Shut down the road in front of McKinney's, do the tent, have some fun activities for people in Lincoln for St. Patrick's Day.
Saints be praised.
Are there any questions from the council at this time? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank
Good
you.
luck this year.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none.
Mr. Chair, seeing no one else coming forward, I'd like to move approval of this item.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Shob, seconded by Councilwoman Raybold. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Ward.
Yes.
Beckius.
Yes.
Raybold.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Shob.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. We can now move on to section 5, our public hearing resolutions. Item 5A is approving the interlocal agreement between the city and Lancaster County for CJIS update.
Is there anyone here to introduce this? Okay. Is there anyone that would like to provide comment on this item?
Hello, I'm Craig Gifford, Information Services Interim Information Services Manager, and this interlocal between the county and the city on CJIS is part of the CGIS upgrade project that we were discussing the contract with you, and this just defines the agreement between the city and the county. It's a joint effort. There's costs sharing, and that's, I guess, entertain any questions on it.
Are there any questions from the council at this time?
No.
Seeing none, thanks so much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on.
We can now vote on that item. And we also do have a motion to amend on that item as well.
Need to make the main motion first, don't we?
Go ahead and move
Someone make
approval.
Gotta move
Second? Did you move it? Did you make a motion?
Approval of the motion, yes.
Yes,
Moved by
Second.
Councilman Beckius, seconded by Councilwoman Raybold.
Now we need
and we'll go ahead and introduce the motion to amend.
Yep.
I'll second that.
Introduced by Councilwoman Raybold.
The motion to amend is to include Exhibit A to Attachment A and substitute the agreement that was signed previously by Lancaster County.
So the motion to amend was introduced by Councilwoman Raybold. I just need a second for the motion to amend.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman McGinnis.
Oh.
Any discussion on the motion to amend? Councilman Chope?
Chief Jackson just arrived. I'm not sure if he wanted to speak on the issue or not. Nope.
No, good.
All right.
Perfect. Is there anyone that would like to speak on the motion to amend?
No.
Is there any further discussion from the council on motion to amend? Okay, seeing none, may we please do a roll call vote on the motion to amend?
Beckius,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, now back to the main motion. Is there any discussion on the main motion? Councilwoman Washington?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been a long time coming. This is one of those really critical, necessary pieces of communication between law enforcement agencies, and I'm glad we're here. Let's get this done.
Thank you. Any other comments from the council? Okay. Seeing no further discussion, let's go ahead and call the roll.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. We can now move on to our next section, Section 6, Public Hearing Ordinances, Second Reading and Related Resolutions. I'll be calling items 6A, 6B, and 6C together. 6A, approving the Tabitha Intergen redevelopment project agreement between the city and Tabitha Intergen LLC relating to the redevelopment of the property generally located between 47th and 48th Streets adjacent to L Street, and the related fiscal year 21-22 CIP to authorize and appropriate $3,291,750 increment financing for the Tabitha Intergen redevelopment project, and the related tax allocation bonds for the Tabitha Intergen redevelopment project in an amount not to exceed $3,291,750.
Good evening, Council. Dan Marvin, Urban Development, 555 South 10th Street. I believe we've got representatives of Tabitha here as well. So I just want to spend a couple of minutes to talk about what has happened with this project since we've been through here. We did a plan amendment. We did a blight on 48th Street. There's been a number of conversations that have been had. And I would say the input that we got from the neighbors were to make a couple of adjustments in what would have been here a couple of months ago. Principally, one adjustment is on bioswales in the area. There, as you'll remember, there was concerns about drainage, and would this be able to accommodate the additional building mass to be able to be built there. So the developer, through the use of TIF and embedded in the redevelopment agreement, are bioswales on the property. And the other was concerns from the neighborhood that the massing of the building was of such a height that it wasn't really consistent with the neighborhood. So in an effort to address those concerns, there's been additional landscaping to mitigate the building. And I think that those have both been improvements. And I'd be remiss to not talk about the population that's being served from this. This population that's being served will largely be seniors that have under 80% area median income to be able to go into a facility that is, that will be new and will be within the neighborhood to address their senior housing needs of seniors for citizens of Lincoln. So I'll stop there and I'll see if there are any particular questions.
Are there any questions for Director Marvin?
No.
Okay, seeing none. Thanks so much. And you said there were some from Tabitha here that wished to speak?
I believe so. Yes.
Good evening. Andrew Willis, 233 South 13th Street, on behalf of Tabitha. Before you today is the redevelopment agreement, kind of the last step to get us there after the blight and substandard study, the PUD, the redevelopment plan. As you'll recall, this project will create 127 residential units at 48th and L. As part of the Tabitha campus, it'll be the next piece of that continuum of care they're providing. And this is a very unique housing project because not only does it provide that affordable housing for seniors, but it's intergenerational. And so we're trying to create a new housing type that allows both the seniors living with primarily Bryan College students and to create that intergenerational living that will help fight the epidemic of loneliness identified in both of those target demographics. Project will cost approximately $22 million, and so the little over 3.2 in TIF really is vital to the feasibility of this project. And again, I know that we've been through here a few times, but so I guess I'd be happy to, and to echo Director Marvin's comments that this has been a project also that there's been a lot of neighborhood meetings and obviously some back and forth, and there has been some design concessions to try to make this a better fit in the neighborhood, and I think that we've got to a good place. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions about.
Are there any questions at this time?
No.
Okay, seeing none. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else here that would like to speak on this item? Anyone else here that would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on.
Next item will be item 6D, Comprehensive Plan Conformance 22001, declaring approximately 1.65 acres of city-owned property generally located at 2201 South 84th Street as surplus.
Good evening. Dan Marvin, Urban Development, 555 South 10th Street. I don't know if the Elmo's working, but if it doesn't work, I'll give you an idea of where this is. On 84th Street, looks like it's going to pop up here. On 84th Street, there is a fire station in this location. When we went through and reconfigured some of our station locations, this one was no longer needed. Although during the pandemic, we used it as part of, I think, some of the PPE items that were going through the hospitals. There was a ultraviolet process that would be able to cleanse some of those. So it was used for a period of time, but there's a surplusing process that we have with the City of Lincoln. This has gone through a surplus where we reached out to other city departments to see if they had a need and a use for this particular area, and the answer was no. And then we took the surplus through through the Planning Commission, and they voted unanimously to go ahead and surplus this property. This would be the next stage in that surplusing process. We don't have a use for it. Here's another map that make 84th Street. There's a pipeline that runs down 84th Street. There's a setback buffer. So housing right up next to 84th Street, it's a busy street anyway, but housing right up next to 84th Street might be a challenge. There'd be some setbacks and there'd be areas back here. The planning we've had meetings on this particular property, and H4 is down over in this location. Our zoning is up in this location. So we're kind of between the two different areas. It could be sold as residential property. It could be sold as H4 property. There would likely be depending on the trip volumes that were to go into this area, there might be a need to build a right-in, right-out lane that would allow a turn lane to come in here and then be able to access the rest of the property. We don't know what level of trip counts a potential buyer would have, so we don't have an answer on that. But we're working through all of those issues right now. Our goal would be that upon the sale, the funds would go into advanced land acquisition and then be used by the fire station to make improvements or acquire other properties elsewhere as they expand and add fire stations. I'll stop there and I'll answer any questions.
Are there any questions at this time? Councilman McGinnis?
Yeah, you know me, I wanted to put this property on the market a while back, but I'm glad we're getting a chance to declare surplus so it can be sold. Who decided on the size of the lot and the type of lot? Or who decided how to subdivide this out?
I think that, as you know, there have been conversations amongst a number of different properties. Obviously, Water wanted to be able to maintain their, this is a water tower, so they wanted to be able to create some kind of buffer that protected that. And I think this is also a city building as well, so they had to carve out the dimensions of the property that were consistent with those other city assets that we're retaining.
If for some reason, and the good part about this will go back to the fire department, and they'll be able to use these funds for future, like you said, site acquisitions.
Yes.
So they can go out and keep ahead of the game a little bit, but to get the highest and best use out of this property or get the highest and best amount of money for it, would the city be willing to look at a different configuration of this lot?
I don't know
Okay.
why not. You know me well. I'm absolutely want to try to get the most that we can possibly get for taxpayers. I know that if it's going to generate additional trip counts, there's going to be the concern about rear end collisions on 84th Street, so we have to kind of work through that and measure those two different elements as well.
Oh yeah, there's quite a few things that we need to look at. There's some, like you said, some large easements that go through the property.
Are you talking about in this area
Yeah.
here, Councilman? Okay.
But there's a large pipe. Isn't that where the water comes in? That's where the water pipe comes.
That I didn't pull that up on
I
my
believe
map.
it is. Okay. Just wondering, would we have to then bring it back forward to us if we wanted to declare more
I think
property
if we-
surplus?
If we increase the size of the area because
Bounds of what we're
it's not
approving
marketable,
today.
we'll have to
It'd
send it back
depend
through
on,
the process.
At that point, we would probably have a purchase agreement or a buyer or user, so we can handle that in the zoning all at once. Because this is staying public, right?
This is currently Zone P for public.
And it'll stay public until it comes back to us.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any further questions for Director Marvin? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on.
I'll be calling item 6E, Street Alley Vacation 21009, application of Dennis Shower to vacate a portion of North 33rd Street at Shower Drive, generally located at North 33rd Street and Shower Drive.
Is there anyone here to speak on this item?
Hello, Matt Langston with Olson. So when this was originally platted, the city required a right-of-way around that entrance just as part of the platting process. However, now that we're coming back with the use permit, the city is making it a condition of approval of that use permit that we take ownership of that little portion of right-of-way. So basically, I'm just here to answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, thanks so much.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on.
I'll be calling item 6F, 6G, and 6H together. Item 6F is Annexation 21011, application of SOFO Housing LLC and the City of Lincoln to annex approximately 61.28 acres, more or less, on property generally located at the northeast corner and southeast corner of West Pioneers Boulevard and South Folsom Street, along with the related annexation agreement between the city and SOFO Housing LLC for the annexation of property generally located in the area between South Folsom Street and West Pioneers Boulevard, and the related change of zone 21055, application of SOFO Housing LLC for a change from AG Agriculture District to R4 PUD, planned unit development with associated waivers on property generally located at South Folsom and West Pioneers Boulevard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the council, my name is Tom Houston. My address is 233 South 13th Street, Suite 1900 here in Lincoln. Appearing before you tonight on behalf of SOFO Housing and Hoppy Development. With me tonight is Fred Hoppy and Jake Hoppy, both principals of Hoppy Development and SOFO Housing, and also Jeremy Williams from Design Associates if you have any questions about the design. The three items that you have on your agenda relate to a new subdivision, Foxtail Meadow. The three items specifically include the annexation of 61.28 acres, generally located at South Folsom and Pioneers Boulevard out in southwest Lincoln. 6G is the annexation agreement specifically for Foxtail Meadow, only for Foxtail Meadow, approximately 47 acres. And then item 6H is the change of zone, seeking a change from the current agricultural zoning classification to the R-4 with a planned unit development on top of it. Now, this is somewhat unusual. Foxtail Meadow is really a subdivision, and there are some specific projects that will be occurring within it. The objective of Foxtail Meadow is really to create a neighborhood of the 41 acres. The planned unit development would contemplate approximately 650 dwelling units plus approximately 15,000 square feet of commercial development. This subdivision involves a mix of a variety of factors. First of all, it's a mix of housing types, including multifamily housing with apartments, townhomes and row homes that will be platted, and some will be individually sold. In addition, we'll have detached single-family houses to make up that mix of different housing types. It's also a mix of different income qualifications. Depending upon what funding program is going to be involved, the subdivision is generally intended to be an affordable subdivision, but it will have a component of low-income housing tax credit funding for families earning no more than 60% of area median income. We also intend to partake in the Nebraska Affordable Housing Trust Fund program and the Home Investment Partnership program to provide housing opportunities, ownership opportunities for families earning no more than 80% of area median income. In addition to that, the subdivision will include market rate housing without restriction on income qualification, primarily targeted at the first-time home buyer and starter home market. Lastly, the 15,000 square feet of commercial space that I mentioned is really to provide neighborhood services that are required within the area. I want to briefly commend my client. Actually, they did a marvelous job working with Hope Reformed Church, which is a stakeholder and property owner in the area. SOFO Housing purchased excess ground to the south and also worked closely with Hope Reformed Church on really planning the site. The church owned over 20 acres, and they will be retaining approximately 6 1/4 acres. The additional 14-acre differential will be acquired by SOFO Housing and be incorporated into the neighborhood and the subdivision. But the church worked closely with Hoppy Development on the design of the project, closely on the process that the church had to pursue to obtain approvals internally within the church structure. So as a result, we have a neighborhood really built around the church with a lot of common amenities that will be available for church use and neighborhood use. The items on your agenda include an annexation agreement as item 6G. It deals with a variety of things that you typically see in an annexation agreement. It includes the intersection improvements at the 1/8 mile, the 1/4 mile, and the 1/2 mile south of Pioneers Boulevard. It doesn't provide all the specifics on the funding of those improvements. We will have to come back perhaps and amend that annexation agreement, but as I'll hopefully tie up here, it will make sense to you why we're moving forward at this time. The annexation agreement also deals with the sanitary sewer line extension. The sanitary sewer line has been extended west of Highway 77. It's located at Old Cheney Road. The annexation agreement envisions the extension of the sanitary sewer line up to serve this property, and it also envisions that the city's capital improvement plan would be modified to provide for funding of that improvement in the 2022-2023 plan. Lastly, the change of zone that's on your agenda, it does have somewhat of a generic PUD, and really deals with the access points and the density of the development. It is likely that additional detail will be coming forward. We'll have to amend that planned unit development through the administrative amendment process as final design and grading and drainage plans are completed. On that regard, you do have a substitute ordinance in front of you that was really requested by the planning department. We're in agreement with that substitute ordinance. It adjusts slightly some of the setback requirements on the perimeter of the development. The reason that this item is on your agenda tonight primarily relates to the Nebraska Investment Finance Authority application schedule. There is an application round that is opening, and the application deadline's mid-March, I think March 16th. You will not vote on these items tonight. You will vote at your next meeting on March 7th. But this subdivision includes specific projects that applications are being submitted to NIFA for another tax-exempt bond financing, similar to the one you approved for Gatehouse Row. And we said at that time we were trying to create a template that you could use in future housing fundings without liability, without exposure for the city. And that application will be submitted. In addition, that's a 4% tax credit application. In addition, there will be a 9% application that will be submitted. And if those are successful, construction would probably commence late 2022, with construction being completed in late 2023. So I would ask for your support of those three items. Jay Copy's here. He's going to share with you some more specific details on the design of the subdivision. But if you have any questions about the three items in your agenda or the annexation agreement, I'd be more than happy to try to answer them.
Are there any questions at this time? Okay, seeing none, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council, and appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about a project we've been working on for a while and that we're very excited about, Foxtail Meadows. Let's see how this works. So I'll go quickly over sort of the overview and the history and a little bit more about how this came about and what we're laying the groundwork for, and then can go a little bit deeper if there are questions into some of the specific areas of design, but I'll keep it pretty high level to start. So we've really taken an approach and are encapsulating it here about how do you lay a groundwork for affordable housing in sort of a new subdivision context that we think can be a template that's a little bit more scalable. What we did at Gatehouse was utilizing an infill lot, sort of an overlooked infill lot, and we achieved a project that had significant scale and mixes with a historic neighborhood. But those infill lots only come available so often. You quickly run out of those sort of opportunities, and if you're relying on redevelopment of similar lots to meet affordable housing goals, we are afraid that we just won't have the sort of scale that the community requires and that the community has been asked to respond to. And so a lot of the challenge that we tried to respond to is how can you do this in a new neighborhood context, and how can you approach a site and an area of town that would otherwise be totally conventional for-profit development? Can we compete with that development, acquire a site, and develop it? So a lot of the questions that we asked ourselves. And what we came up with is the plan that you're going to see here today. It's up to 650 units of housing and about 1.5 acres of commercial space. And the anticipation, if the programs and our applications are successful over the development period, would be that we would have about half of the housing there would be income restricted, and about half would be market rate in some context. And the other big piece that we experimented with is how do we approach the concept of affordable housing for purchase sort of at scale. So what got us very excited about this is we thought about it as responding to the Affordable Housing Coordinated Action Plan at scale again, and it will be developed over a 5 to 7 year period. We looked closely at some of the recommendations of the 2050 Comprehensive Plan around not only providing affordable housing, but that concept of complete neighborhood and thinking about what kind of amenities do we need to provide here, what kind of green space and open space. A lot about the idea, I mean, a lot of the impetus here was that concept of equity and inclusion and building outside or an alternative to affordable housing in sort of the core neighborhoods or otherwise high poverty neighborhoods, and trying to provide an alternative paradigm. And then focusing a lot on that increasing of the housing variety. So having both single family detached, multifamily, but intermediary types of housing that are more commonly referred to as missing middle. And again, focusing on being able to look at both providing rental and ownership opportunities. So just a quick history, I'll go through this quickly. I know there's a lot to get to tonight, but we purchased the first 27 acres in a public-private collaboration with the Lincoln Community Foundation and Westgate Bank. The subsequent purchases, we're hoping to work with the new CDFI to help finance those portions of the development, but it really has been a community effort that the initial Gatehouse project sort of brought a bunch of folks together. This we think of as kind of an extension of that. We initially engaged Hope Community Church just as a neighbor to communicate what our plans were. And as we got into a dialogue, what we were describing sort of fit within their paradigm of becoming a more community-based church. And so thinking of themselves as kind of a supportive service or amenity or anchor for the broader community was very attractive to them. And we ended up working out a nice design collaboration where they gave us some of the things that were important to them. We were able to incorporate them into the design, and they ultimately voted to sell the 14 acres of surplus land to us. We'll be partnering with various nonprofits across the different stages of development, some of those through the tax credit housing, some of those through the for sale housing. But we're looking forward to bringing some other groups to support it. We've been working with city staff both on the design, which has been extremely helpful, and then also thinking about what the financial contribution or what's required in order to have this expressed as an affordable housing development ultimately. So that's including, as was referred to, the infrastructure funds for the off-site sewer, the arterial street improvements, and many of those conversations we're still working through some of the details, which is why some of the annexation agreement sort of puts those details off for subsequent resolution. And then we additionally will work with the city on support once we get from sort of the master development level to the individual projects as appropriate. Again, just since it's a visual product, it's always nice to have a couple pictures of what it looks like. But this is facing south from the church and kind of the viewpoint of the commercial space adjacent. And then what we worked out with was trying to concentrate the amenities or some of the outdoor space so that it's usable from the congregation and from the community at large. So at that point, I'd answer any questions that the council has.
Are there any questions? Councilwoman Washington?
Thanks for coming and explaining this. Could you point out the area where the commercial activity will be?
Yes. So we sort of co-located the commercial activity with the church. So it's the main entrance, the middle entrance. What we have there now is a 1.5 acre pad site. We've talked to some convenience stores. We wanted something where people could do a level of shopping or take care of some basic needs, but we don't have necessarily a designated use.
And in your maps that label the areas 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is this the one that's not labeled with a number?
Yes, this is this section here. So this is a.
All right.
Let me see if I have a.
That was the picture I was looking at.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's the one that I neglected to label, unfortunately. But yeah, that's where.
We're getting dizzy. Thank you. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Any further questions? Councilwoman Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Jake and both Mr. Hoppies for the project. And just want to ask again, so half our market rate housing and half our affordable housing, is that correct?
Yeah, right now we have about half would be truly tax credit financed affordable housing. The other half would be, there may be some affordable mechanisms like the 80 to 120% that was being referenced. Yeah.
Great, very good. I know it's in line with the affordable action plan that we passed and supported, so thank you for that. Because this is at a different location than some of our other recent affordable housing projects, Gatehouse is unique, and we all supported that unanimously. Yeah. One of the things I think about in terms of the client profile for affordable housing is how they get there. In this case, maybe bus line. Is the bus line something that I'm sure came up perhaps in discussions with the city, us? And can you talk to us about how that's looking, or if that's on the table, or what that may be, those conversations, how those are going?
I would say it is of high level of interest to us to think about how the city accesses it. I think we are probably at the early stages of figuring out what that negotiation looks like from the city's planning perspective. I think there was some desire to bring that negotiation forward and express it in the annexation agreement, and decided that it was probably best had outside of the annexation agreement, or was a non-standard item that wasn't typically included in annexation agreements. But I think all that is to say, we are very interested in figuring out what catalyzes the city to plan a route that would make a community like this accessible. Yes.
Very good. That's helpful to know. Mr. Chair, I don't know if we'll have city staff speaking, but if they're around, I would like to talk to them about the bus line before we conclude the hearing. Awesome. So, here comes Director Carey. But if there's no other, go ahead.
Councilman McGinnis.
Thank you.
One more question for the applicant. Are these all rental units?
No, we're experimenting with affordable for sale option, and using, there's a state affordable housing trust fund application that we'll be submitting that will support sort of 120% median income and below to purchase units. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Hoppy? Okay, seeing none, if city staff could come up and address Councilwoman Ward's question about bus lines.
I'll just leave you with a pretty picture of it.
Thank you.
David Carey, Director of the Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street.
Thank you, Director Carey, for coming forward. Don't know if this was in your purview or LTU, but could you talk to us about the decision or where we're at for proposed? I know this is a unique location and it's an annexation issue, so I'm interested in your thoughts.
Sure. So to start, it is an LTU purview. Obviously, it's StarTran is within the budget and the operations of LTU. However, those conversations have been had. Basically, where things stand with bus lines, especially on the edge of the community, they become more and more difficult to be able to be productive, just because of the lower density. That doesn't mean that this area won't have a bus line at some point in the future. Currently, it does not. But every year, those bus lines are assessed and looked at as far as how productive they are, as well as during the budget process every year or 2 years, depending on what the budget looks like. The considerations are what type of services can be provided by StarTran. So what I'm saying is that the consideration is that it's an ongoing conversation. At this time, it has not been decided to put a bus line out there, but that doesn't mean it can't happen in the future. And there are very regular reviews of the bus system, so those opportunities are in the future.
Thank you, and thank you for addressing outside of your purview, and I just want to acknowledge that. So is it being studied, or are you able to answer that? I mean,
in detail, I'm not able to answer that.
Okay.
I will say that there is a study of the overall system that has been occurring for the bus transit system. So this and many other topics are being considered as part of that.
Of this
so
project.
That is something that's going to be coming forward later.
Okay.
But again, I think this is an opportunity to consider areas like this as it develops and in the future, but not necessarily right now.
Okay, great. I would agree. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions? Councilman McGinnis?
Just a quick question on the annexation agreement. I see we're annexing a couple acreages also as part of this up on Tower Road.
Yes.
And the reason we're doing that, did they ask to be annexed, or?
They did not ask to be annexed. We have been in communication with the property owners, let them know that to have a kind of a straighter, more cohesive line would make sense to bring these properties in, and so they're aware of that, and they're not against the annexations.
And there's a dirt road or even a road that's platted, Tower Road, that we're going to be annexing?
I I believe so, but I'd have to look at that more closely to be able to speak to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, what was the reason we did that? Just so we could have contiguous?
Yeah, I think
City?
in general, it's the contiguous nature, and to have it not leave areas out that otherwise would make sense to bring in.
And I see we're annexing both sides of the road. So we're annexing the east side of.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you annex a road, the whole road comes into the city regardless of
And
whether.
we're annexing the property on the east side also.
Okay.
Okay.
Any further questions? Councilman Washington?
Mr. Carey, Director Carey, thank you for coming up. And I don't think I heard you very clearly, and so I just needed to ask, because, thank you, Councilman McGinnis, because I was curious, are the two other properties supportive of being annexed?
I guess I would not say that they're supportive. I think they acknowledge that they're part of this annexation, and they're not against it happening. So.
Okay, because it's, yeah, there'll be a change for them.
Correct.
A couple of changes for them, actually, and I just sort of, since they didn't ask for it. All right. And I'll take this time to thank Councilwoman Ward for bringing up some really good questions about the bus line. Because Affordable Housing Task Force did say that we should put affordable housing where there's transit. So thank you.
Any further questions for Director Carey? Seeing none, thank you so much, Director. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item?
Fred Hoppy, 1600 Stony Hill Road, Lincoln, Nebraska. Just quickly, we're asking today for the annexation of the neighborhood and really the creation of the neighborhood. We'll be back to you pretty quickly with individual projects that are identified specifically in sections of this neighborhood. So you can take a look at what we're going to be doing specifically. We're going to hopefully come forward asking for tax increment financing for the portions of the project to really enable us to create the neighborhood and put it at the price points and to service the clientele that we're targeting. So when you look at it, hopefully it'll be easy to say, yeah, that's a neighborhood we want, because we do want to move housing of all price points around the city, and this is a start. So we'd ask for your support and answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Hoppy? Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here that would like to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on.
I'll be calling items 6I, 6J, and 6K together. Annexation 21009, application of the Lincoln Housing Authority to annex approximately 13.59 acres, more or less generally located at South Folsom Street and West Old Cheney Road, and the related conditional annexation agreement between the city and the Housing Authority of the City of Lincoln for annexation of property generally located in this area of South Folsom Street and West Old Cheney Road, and the change of zone 21051, application of the Lincoln Housing Authority for a change from AG Agriculture District to R4 Residential District on property generally located at South Folsom Street and West Old Cheney Road.
Me again. Tom Houston, 233 South 13th, Suite 1900 here in Lincoln on behalf of the Housing Authority of the City of Lincoln. With me tonight is Chris Lamberty, the Executive Director of the Housing Authority, and Thomas Judge, the Director of Planning for the Housing Authority. The Lincoln Housing Authority has a long and storied history of providing housing around and in the City of Lincoln. They've had traditional HUD or HUD projects around the city. It's really started with Arnold Heights in Northwest Lincoln in the Air Park area. Continued with Mahoney Manor up in the Havelock area, Burke Plaza, which then was East Lincoln. There's also, the Housing Authority's been very active in the utilization of the low-income housing tax credit tool, starting with the Woodbridge project in 1988, located at 22nd and Pine Lake Road. Continuing with the Summer Hill project, the apartments and townhomes generally located at 56th and Union Hill Road south of Pine Lake Road. Continuing again with the Prairie Crossing project at 33rd and Yankee Hill Road. Of those three construction projects, or new construction, really within the last several decades. The Housing Authority has also been instrumental in preserving affordable housing, acquiring some prior low-income housing tax credit projects, including the Crossroads House downtown here at 10th and O, and also the Sunny Ridge Townhomes at 18th and Superior Street, and preserving those historically affordable projects for affordable housing into the future. What we have on your agenda tonight, 3 items really dealing with the next installment. Housing Authority proposes an affordable housing development located at South Folsom Street and Old Cheney Road. It's entitled Emerald View Apartments. This newest endeavor requires the annexation of 13.59 acres and the approval of a conditional annexation agreement between the Housing Authority and the city, both of which are on your agenda. In addition, it requires a change of zone. The current AG zone would require a change to the R-4 residential zoning classification. It is important to note that on January 5th, the Planning Commission did approve a special permit for a community unit plan for this property. What I have on the Elmo right now is a reflection of 128 units. This is the more attractive site plan that's not really part of the CUP, but I think it really demonstrates what the intent of the development will be, because what was approved was more of a generic community unit plan that shows location of access points and also deals with the density of 128 dwelling units. The other item that was approved on February 9th was a request for deviation was filed to achieve approval for the access point on Old Cheney Road, and that was approved by Lincoln Transportation Utilities, roughly located 400 feet west of the intersection of Old Cheney Road and South Folsom Street. So the 3 items in front of you are really designed to allow the Housing Authority to submit an application to the Nebraska Investment and Finance Authority by mid-March for this project. It is anticipated that the Housing Authority will likely have to phase this project to 64 units in 2 different phases. And so this property will be subdivided at some point so we can have 2 different phases. But the design is really intended to be similar to the Prairie Crossing project down at 33rd and Pine Lake, or Yankee Hill Road, which I think is one of the most attractive affordable housing projects. Driving by it, it is very attractive, and I think it receives a lot of compliments. So I would ask for your support of the annexation agreement, and the change of zone. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to try to answer them.
Are there any questions? Councilman McGinnis?
A few. You said this is the annexation agreement, but not the PUD or the plan. We'll have a chance to approve the plan at a later date?
The annexation agreement, I don't know if it's going to require much amendment, because it really, about the only thing that the annexation agreement deals with is the annexation, does mention the change of zone, and that the city's long-term plan envisions a bike path on the west side of Folsom Street. And it would make more sense for the Housing Authority to contribute a dollar amount to the city, and the annexation agreement deals with that. It's roughly $90,000 is being contributed to the city for the construction of a bike path when Folsom Street improvements are made. And we do that on a frequent basis.
So, yeah, you're saying the housing do not pay property taxes or impact fees?
No, 2 different questions there.
Yeah, I know.
The low-income housing tax credit tool that will be utilized for financing requires the ownership by a limited partnership or a limited liability company. So this property will pay real estate taxes for a minimum of 15 years.
Okay.
And but also, as we understand, the particular section of the impact fee ordinance does provide 100% exemption for low-income housing tax credit projects where the families earn no more than 60% of area median income. And this project will qualify for that exemption. But
Okay.
will pay real estate taxes, won't pay impact fees.
And all the roadway and offsites are all being paid by the Housing Authority? Okay.
Turn lanes at the northern border and then also on Old Cheney Road. One of the challenges we had is what becomes of Old Cheney Road in the future. I mean, we don't know.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on.
That concludes our public hearing ordinances, second reading, and related resolutions. We can move on now to our next section, Section 7, ordinances, third reading, and related resolutions with continued public hearing and action. Item 7A is amending Lincoln Municipal Code, Chapter 2.18, Purchasing Division by adding a new section numbered 2.18034 entitled Contractor Provisions to incorporate a bid incentive for apprentice utilization.
The workforce shortage is a major challenge to Nebraska businesses and government projects. A part of the solution to this challenge is to promote apprenticeship programs that train workers in skills such as electrical, plumbing, and others. The Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act local plan prioritizes apprenticeship programs as part of our comprehensive workforce development initiatives. Our city currently is lacking in this opportunity for my generation and the next generation of skilled workers. This ordinance uses a definition of apprentice that requires Department of Labor registration and/or sponsorship, meaning that they combine paid on-the-job training with classroom instruction to prepare workers for highly skilled careers. After the completion of this apprenticeship, they earn a national credential that certifies their skill level for current and future employers. This ordinance allows for a bidding incentive to recognize such wage and job training contributions of a bidder participating in an apprenticeship program as one of the review criteria, along with criteria like cost and experience. Apprenticeship programs sponsors can be employers, employer associations, or labor unions. The goal of this ordinance is to support apprenticeship training programs and recognize the contributions of employers who participate in such programs as one of many factors in considering contract awards. Lincoln is in a construction boom. Lincoln has passed the $1 billion mark for annual construction permits, and we are a pro-growth city that has approved and appropriated significant funding to growth and development. To be clear, this ordinance does not mandate that anyone becomes a registered apprenticeship program, and today we will hear public comment from people who are in support of this ordinance and people who are in opposition to this ordinance. I look forward to continuing to work together to find a solution to address our shortage of skilled workers and to develop the next generation. That being said, we'll go ahead and, this is a continuation of a public hearing, so we'll go ahead and open it up to public comment. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. When you come up, please state your name and your address, and there will be a 1 minute buzzer warning when there's 1 minute remaining in your testimony time. Who would like to be first?
Hi. Laura Smuskowitz. Last name is S-M as in Mary, U-S-K-I-E-W-I-C as in California, Z as in zebra. 5th year apprentice. Yeah, you can just, Laura's fine. There's been a lot of discussion about low income housing. I'm here to tell you about how you could maybe support the low income part. Not necessarily support low income, but help address that issue. I have 2 other college degrees. I have my Associates of Applied Science and Surgical Technology, and I have my Bachelor's in Biological Sciences with emphasis in pre-med and pre-nursing. I made squat with that. I couldn't support my family. I couldn't get insurance. I couldn't afford to take my vehicles into the shop. It was a struggle. I was always looking for an additional part-time job just to pay for the daycare to go to work. So, I mean, I am absolutely in there, and I never was low enough to qualify for any kind of assistance. Not really. I mean, the kids got some Medicaid here and there, but I mean, that was about it. I had to figure it out. And it wasn't until I got into this program, I qualified for a mortgage completely on my own income. I don't have to keep track of what's in my bank account for the first time. I mean, I was at a point where I was making my own laundry soap. I mean, that's pinching pennies. And now I can get my car in and out of the shop. I can purchase a new vehicle if I need to. My kids are able to participate in after-school sports. They're in orchestra, they're in choir, they're in theater. I mean, and I can do that on my own as a single parent. So, I mean, it's really great. And then where else do I go with it? Me and my family were all insured very quickly after joining in with the program. They've been insured the entire time. It's not just about a good wage and insurance, but there's also wonderful benefits. There's a really excellent retirement package, so I will be taken care of beyond what my career is. And so, like I said, you're supposed to be able to go to school, get good grades, and you're supposed to get a good job. That doesn't work so well for anyone anymore. And if you look around the globe, they've been utilizing apprenticeship programs starting as early as high school. I mean, it's really wonderful. Not everybody feels at home in a cubicle in front of a computer. They want to move around. They want to see a little sunshine. They want to use their hands. And this has been a fantastic thing that I stumbled into because the financial independence, I'm a lot more happy up and moving around. My family is taken care of and taken care of well, and I am able to do that on my own, which is a super great example for my 3 girls. So there's obviously a cost that comes with this because there's other contractors out there and they may not provide the same type of things to their workers. I happen to work for a union contractor. They have to, which is great. So I get paid that really competitive wage and I get a really competitive package, and I don't need any kind of assistance because I can do it on my own, which is fantastic. We need more of that. So that's it. Questions?
Thank you so much. Councilwoman Raybold?
Ms. Suskowitz, thanks for coming down. Can you tell me, I'm not quite clear, what program are you involved in as an apprentice? So tell me what you do.
I'm an electrician.
Okay, thank you.
I'm about 2 months away from taking my license exam, so I've been in the program about 5 years.
And then are you still an apprentice? And then
Yes,
once you...
until I get my license.
Okay, and then you become a journeyman, right?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
Any further questions?
No.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks.
Hello, Rob Svoboda with Prairie Mechanical in Lincoln, 5900 North 58th Street. Just here to show my support for this ordinance, and I appreciate the city's continued support of recognizing the importance of the skilled trades. Without apprentice programs, our skilled trades could be a lot worse for labor than they are today. With the opportunity of apprentice programs, the companies and the locals that do have the programs, it's continued education after the apprentice program, so they're constantly bettering themselves and their families after they're out of the apprentice program. So that said, I just want to thank you for your support.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? No. Thank you so much for coming down.
Hi, my name is Felicia Hilton, FELICIAHILTON, with the North Central States Regional Council of Carpenters. I'm coming before you today to ask you for your support of the bid incentive ordinance before you. I think it's critically important for local governments and all governments to recognize that the apprenticeship programs are STEM applied. They're science, technology, engineering, and math applied. And to also recognize that everyone is engaged in this one of the oldest forms of people learning new skills, which is the apprenticeship program. So you have the federal government, you have the state government here in Nebraska, all focused on apprenticeship programs. You have the Department of Labor in Nebraska focused on trying to support apprenticeship programs, trying to encourage employers to invest in apprenticeship programs. And it's ordinances like these that say that the city of Lincoln also thinks it's important to support the engagement and the recruitment of young people into the apprenticeship program, and offering a bid incentive for the contractors that also make this investment in young people that earn while they're learning, young adults, people with families, people that are starting their careers over, the people that make that investment in the folks like the young woman that you heard in the apprenticeship program. Those contractors are who this is about. This isn't really something where we're asking the city to do a really heavy lift. What we're asking the city to do is also kind of join in with the rest of us that have recognized that this form of education, we're 140 years this year as the carpenters. We've been doing this a long time, and to recognize that it isn't just the apprenticeships and the union contractors and the rank and the members that are a part of the union. But there's a number of different ways in which the apprentices can be recognized, and this is one of them. Local governments actually saying it is important that we have people in our own community building our projects. If they're city taxpayer-funded projects, that this is our small effort at pitching in on workforce development, because that's what you're doing, is we need the continuing pipeline of work for young people that are coming into the trades. And so we know that we have the infrastructure bill that's passed. We have tons of ARPA dollars that are coming into local governments as well. And it's just a great opportunity and the perfect timing to really engage in with us, we believe, in the effort to recruit young people where they live. And so there's a ton of people here that live here, that came through the apprenticeship, that are doing great work. But a lot of times they can't build in Lincoln. So we're just trying to find a way that we can incentivize everyone participating in recruiting young people and making sure that there's a real pipeline whenever there's the possibility to do that. And this is just one way, a small way. There's obviously bigger efforts out there, but we think that this effort is worth it to join us in trying to recruit young people where they are and to make sure that they have a pipeline to go into work when they're in the trades.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Richard Marshall, North Central States Regional Council of Carpenters, and I stand before you a 48-year apprentice. I was an apprentice in 1973, and it made my career, made my living, raised my family. And not only was it a 4-year program for me then, but as I continued to work, I continued to get updating training through the apprenticeship program, through journeyman upgrade training. Our training programs go from the start of your career to the end of your career if you want to take advantage of that once you're a journeyman. And like I said, it provided a living for myself, my family. I raised 3 kids. It's a good deal. And the other thing is, there's no cost to the community for an apprenticeship program. There's no city funding for like a community college or the school to work programs. The apprentices and the contractors bear the cost on their own, and they benefit from it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Jason Brunk, Jasonbrunk. I am an apprentice electrician currently working and living in Lincoln. I'm in my 2nd year of my 5-year apprenticeship program. I'm going to school 2 nights a week while working during the day full-time by a participating electrical contractor. I am being taught in school by journey level men and women licensed in the state of Nebraska that they themselves work in the field. Secondary school makes it very difficult to maintain a full-time job between long and strange hours of classes. Registered apprenticeship programs form classes around a full-time job with a sponsoring employee to help the apprentices to have a living wage while building a lifelong career. I know that it's been a big part for some of my classmates as well, such as Laura. Some of them have families and still need to provide for them as long as they go through the program. This program has been allowing them to get their training and schooling and still provide for their families and not be debt at the end. As secondary schools saddle their students down with heavy debt, the best way to train is a registered apprenticeship program with instructors from the field that are currently working in the field with the apprentices that they teach. This helps all of them to be the best trained in the Midwest and across the U.S. As a 22-year-old myself, getting into the apprenticeship program has helped me come out from underneath my parents and support myself as a young adult. It has given me the opportunity to be in touch with instructors and professionals around the country in an always changing career and industry. In my career and where I am currently at in my training, there will be lots of growth opportunity in continuing my education. within my industry and the continued challenging myself to keep learning. I ask for your support for the city ordinance and allow it to support and encourage the use of registered and approved apprenticeship programs. I think that it is important to cultivate and endorse apprenticeship programs that train us to give the voice to the men and women working in the field of the electrical construction and maintenance industry in Nebraska. Thank you for your time and consideration, and appreciate your support of this positive change for Lincoln, Nebraska.
Thanks so much. Can you just state your address for the record, please?
112 West Saunders Avenue.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? No. Thanks so much.
Hello, my name is David Notaro. I live at 3261 Merrill Street, Lincoln, Nebraska. It's over by East Campus. I grew up in North Lincoln. I was born in Lincoln, born at Lincoln General Hospital when they used to still have births there. I am definitely in support of this. This is a good thing. You know, I've seen a lot of things recently that say we should promote apprenticeships the same way we promote other avenues like college and other things that are going to prepare people to be successful in life. I hold the apprenticeship program near and dear to me because I went through the apprenticeship program, and it changed my life for a lot of reasons. Like I said, I grew up in North Lincoln. I was raised in a single mother household with 5 kids, and I know what it's like to struggle. I saw it growing up. I made a lot of bad decisions and was pretty aimless when I was younger. Didn't really know what to do. School wasn't a great option for me, and I needed to learn something. And so when I came across the apprenticeship, this really gave me direction in my life. I feel like I had been given a second chance. I was able to not only learn a trade that was going to keep me employable the rest of my life, but I was also able to earn money as I was doing it, because I was going through with increasingly better pay. And today, that address I told you where I live, I own that home. You know, things that I never thought were going to be possible for me. I not only learned the trade. I'm a pipe fitter, by the way, and a plumber. I have my Lincoln plumbing license. And I've worked on a lot of projects in Lincoln. I was on 3 phases of the Brian East remodel. I was on the Shields building. I've remodeled several schools: Leffler Middle School, West Lincoln Elementary, and I also participated in the building of the electrician's apprenticeship center down there when they put the new training center in. But I don't know why anybody would not be in support of something that's so good for the next generation of workers, that's going to be, you know, doing the essential things that we need. If Lincoln is expanding at the rate, we need those skilled workers. We need, you know, carpenters, we need electricians, we need plumbers to fill these positions. And the apprenticeship program is unparalleled in that, because you're working hand in hand with people that are experienced while intermingling it with the classroom training. I mean, it's top notch for turning out skilled workers. And not only that, but I learned a lot of other things, employability through the apprenticeship. You know, we have something we call the standard of excellence, which teaches people to be, you know, those skills of being employable that some of us don't know. Some of us would think they're common sense, but they're not to everybody, you know. And learning that, I've also learned things like giving back to the community. You know, every year we do volunteer work to try to work on people's furnaces, and because of this example that's been set for me, I also do volunteer work on my own. I volunteer out at the county jail. I volunteer at the Nebraska State Penitentiary, because I want to see people be successful in life, and people that are down on their luck. And this is what this does. This helps people. You heard the stories of people that are excited about this, as excited as I am. And you wouldn't believe how excited I was last year when they asked me if I would facilitate a class in Lincoln. I am now facilitating the grade 6, which is a state license for Nebraska, the backflow license at our Lincoln Training Center. And it's a very important thing, because the people that I'm training are responsible for testing backflows, which is what keeps our Lincoln City water protected. So
1 minute.
I'm not going to take up any more of your time, but I'm definitely in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, council members. I'm Steve Willis, president of Stevens and Smith Construction. My address is 1542 South First Street. And I'm here today representing the Nebraska Building Chapter of the Associated General Contractors. The Building Chapter is a trade association with 130 commercial firms that represent thousands of managers and craft employees that build structures locally, regionally, and nationally. About 1/3 of our members build in the Lincoln area. The chapter is opposed to Ordinance 2.18.034. I want to address one aspect of opposition in this testimony. Giving preference for apprenticeship training. Apprenticeship training is one of many excellent types of training used in our industry. To single it out as a preference for one bidder over another is discriminatory to all other excellent training options currently being used by local contractors. This ordinance gives little credit to employers' right to select, train, and develop their own employees. It disregards the major financial investments local construction companies have made for in-house training programs and disregards other established industry certifications. All AGC members invest heavily in their workforce through education and training. Let me use my company as an example. Stevens & Smith is in its 51st year here in Lincoln in business. We oppose this ordinance even though we have a federally recognized apprentice program through the United States Department of Labor. It is a good program, but only a small part of our overall training. Along with our annual safety training required by OSHA, we utilize training from the American Concrete Institute, American Society of Concrete Contractors, Nebraska Concrete and Aggregate Association, and other trade groups for technical training in our industry. We have worked in collaboration with Southeast Community College to develop a concrete diploma program that creates a pathway for concrete professionals. This program is not in place yet, but will begin next year. We look forward to becoming a future, for that to become a future part of our training program. But again, the concrete diploma program does not begin until next year. More than 1/3 of our flatwork division craft workers are certified by the American Concrete Institute as advanced flatwork finishers. To achieve this certification, one must have achieved a minimum of 4,500 hours of on-the-job finishing experience and must have successfully passed the written exam. This ACI certification is more readily available and very relevant to the subject of qualified Lincoln concrete contractors, yet under this ordinance, it is completely ignored. Our foundation division is a certified foundation contractor through the Concrete Foundation Association. To obtain and maintain certification, our staff must obtain related continuing education along with being insured, bonded, and licensed. We also have craftsmen that are certified as residential concrete foundation technicians by the American Concrete Foundation Association. As you can see, we have a well-established in-house training program, on-the-job training, webinars, industry association certification training, and testing programs. We also utilize technical community programs and apprenticeships in our employee training and development. We are not unique in the Nebraska construction industry. Most companies use a variety of strategies to train and update their employees. We are, however, unique among merit-based concrete contractors in Nebraska because we have the only federally approved apprentice program in the state. We do not feel, however, that this apprentice program should give us or any other contractor bidding advantage over other well-trained and qualified local contractors.
1 minute.
On behalf of AGC Building Chapter and Stevens & Smith, we oppose this ordinance and we believe it should be removed until such time that it recognizes all contractors' rights to select, train, and develop their own employees. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Thank you so much for coming down.
Good evening, council members. I'm Chris Brester with Brester Construction,
1200 Infinity Court. We're a longtime member of the Associated General Contractors Nebraska Building Chapter, and I'm here today to represent our membership. As Steve said, we represent 130 of Nebraska's top contracting firms. The AGC Nebraska Building Chapter appreciates all the dialogue and learning that's taken place between ourselves and the council members in the last few weeks. We thank you for all of your efforts with this amendment. However, we still oppose the adoption at this time. Within our membership, we have both open shop and union firms. Each of these employers decide how to hire, train, and develop their workforce. In the industry, there are many different skills and job titles that are necessary from entry level on up to skill train. Training is a constant and a given in each of our firms. However, there are many methods to execute the training and many providers to deliver that training. This amendment is moving in the right direction, we believe, by adding technical community college programs to the definition of apprenticeship. However, it still unnecessarily restricts other education programs that are acceptable and favors apprenticeship over other effective and suitable options. The construction industry in Nebraska already invests heavily in all types of training for their workforce. This ordinance would require a vast majority of firms in the region to invest in additional unneeded training programs and tracking just to do projects for the city of Lincoln. A potential impact is that some firms will avoid submitting bids to the city because of the competitive disadvantage caused by the time and necessary approvals needed for this program. Further, finding employees is already difficult. Compounding this difficulty with standards as set forth in the ordinance make this task more difficult if only certain classes of employees are needed to satisfy certain requirements of the ordinance. Currently within our industry, there are remedies in place for misclassified workers and non-compliant workers' compensation payers. It seems redundant to repeat this effort at a local level. I know that was another issue that was discussed early on. This ordinance adds administrative burden, staff time, and cost to the general contractors, as well as the taxpayer because of preference given. An example of the additional cost would be, we've talked for quite a long time about a new city library. I don't know what the cost of that library would be, but let's say it's a $10 million project. I believe it's significantly higher. In this scenario, if contractor A meets the 10% requirement on that $10 million project, their bid is lowered by 5%. Contractor B bids the project, does not meet that requirement. Contractor A bids at 10 million. Contractor B, who doesn't meet the requirements, bids at 9.6 million. Contractor A's bid is then lowered to 9.5 million for the purposes of awarding the project. Then at the time of contract, contractor A, who met the requirements, is paid $10 million, thus costing the taxpayers an additional $400,000. Not to mention the time and staff that are required to make sure that they comply. Currently within our industry, this ordinance adds administrative burden. I talked about that. The city wants to encourage and support emerging businesses and small to medium-sized businesses. Yet requirements like this are discriminatory to said businesses. It may eliminate this group of construction firms from pursuing city projects due to the resources that they need to comply and to implement. There are harsh penalties additionally for a contractor that enters into a contract under this ordinance and then is not able to comply with the contract provisions, but there is no due process that is included. This ordinance will likely eliminate many local construction firms from pursuing work with the city due to not meeting the narrow scope training requirements. And again, as I said, administrating the ordinance will have a municipal fiscal impact.
1 minute.
We believe that here are some possible suggestions to offer for consideration. First, increase the threshold for projects covered by the ordinance. If this is raised, it substantially lessens the administrative cost for the city and lessens the discriminatory nature for small and emerging businesses. Expand the definition of acceptable training programs. Take out the items already covered by other ordinances and laws and address items that are not included in these ordinances or in this ordinance. And include a due process clause that makes the process a fair process. In conclusion, the AGC Building Chapter opposes the ordinance as amended and respectfully asks that you do not advance it at this time. Thank you for your consideration and your service. As always, we're open to and look forward to a conversation.
Thank you so much for coming down. Does anyone from the council have any questions? Councilwoman Washington?
I was trying to take notes, and I'm not as fast as I thought I was. I think it was your third point there at the end. You had, it was just ahead of the due process clause, your suggestion to add the due process above that one. What did
Above
you?
that one?
Yeah.
Just expand the definition of acceptable training.
Oh,
we think that
I got that. Okay.
there's a need for that expansion because we all have to train. When you have an unemployment rate like we do in Nebraska, you have to train, you have to provide good benefits, or you're not going to keep your employees. So we all believe we do a good job of on-the-job training. We aren't all registered with the Department of Labor.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Anything else?
Okay. Seeing none, thank you so much.
I don't mind telling you, I'm not comfortable in this environment. My name's Christopher Anderson. I moved here in 1989 when I was 25. I've been working in construction since I was 15. I grew up in a family full of tradesmen. I'm not sure what to say. I worked in this town from 25 to 37. Well, I've worked this town my whole life. I worked in this town from 25 to 37 non-union for Kingery Construction, Builders Inc., Wood Construction, Judd Construction, and others. And I have to tell you, I celebrate that they let me work for them. They're good companies. When I heard Stevens and Smith come up and describe what he's doing with his apprenticeship and his training, I celebrated. I got a first cousin works for him and has been there for many years, as old as I am, and had a very successful career and definitely has been trained. But I want you to hear my story a little bit if I could. I had a lot of experience by the time I started here in 25 years old in '89. I met a school teacher, fell in love, got married. I lived in Lincoln or Omaha originally, and that's part of the reason I live here. We bought a house in '94 and we raised our family here. They've grown up, my children are grown up, and it's been a beautiful thing. But I have to tell you that when I worked from 25 to 37, it was a battle to learn the trade. I worked bouncing between 9 and 13.25 an hour for 12 years. The reason it was hard to learn the trade was because the minute you knew something, once it got slow, they'd lay off whoever didn't know something and use whoever's cheapest. So as a person of 25 years old, I knew quite a bit, and I fought to learn the trade. And the reason they wouldn't share was because if you knew it and you worked for $9 an hour and they knew it and they worked for 14, there's a good chance when things got slow, they kept the cheaper guy that knew something. So the old people wouldn't share anything with anybody, and that's a fact. And it wasn't until I found out and joined the union at 37 when things were slow in 2002, and I was commuting to and from Omaha, working down there for non-union wages in a relatively union community, just how little I really knew. I joined the union as a journeyman because when they offered, you should test and find out where you're at in the apprenticeship, I assured them, I'm 35, 37 years old. I'm not an apprentice. If I'm an apprentice, I can give you my hammer, go flip burgers because I know how to do this. I went to work the next day and I earned my wage as a journeyman every day ever since. And I've continued to be an apprentice effectively ever since, as Mr. Marshall described his testimony about his career. I only worked on the job for a few months before I realized the apprentices around me were studying out of textbooks that were created by carpenters who'd worked for hundreds of years, learning their trade and learning how to transmit it forward to the next generation. I was working alongside of younger guys, young guys, who knew more than I did. He talked about that journeyman upgrade. For me, because I entered as a journeyman and I proved myself for 6 months and they kept me as a journeyman, I recognized how short I was in my training by the time I was 37. I took every night class I could get. I hung out at the training center down in Omaha, which is where the training was at that point, for every class, everything I could get my hands on, because they were giving away all the trade secrets and all the information, and it was coming from people who were subject matter experts who'd studied and learned how to transmit and communicate the trade forward for over 100 years. I got to be such a regular at the training center that they eventually asked me, you know, Chris, you know an awful lot about certain aspects of this trade. I was a concrete form carpenter, by the way. I helped form the vaults out in front of this building. As I walked up, I celebrated. I remember in the mid-90s building that.
1 minute?
1 minute. Wow, it goes fast. Family, I've built this community. I've built your hospitals. I've built your university. I've built your freshwater systems. I've built your wastewater systems. When I did it non-union, I bounced between $9 and $13.50 an hour. As soon as I went union, I made a decent living wage, and it made possible for me and my wife, who's a school teacher, to survive without housing assistance when the electrician mentioned how hard it is. Beyond that, what they're asking for in this ordinance, and I've read it through a couple times. I'm not a legal guy, but I read it well enough to understand what it's asking for. It's asking for a 10% difference in the way you assess lowest possible bid. I guess I'm going to tell you, I've been working in your community, and that 10% difference in wage is going to come back to this community in so many more ways. I ended up becoming an instructor for 10 years, teaching this trade to young people for 10 years before I went back into the field again. And the value of the apprenticeship is the next generation. I can personally stand and tell you that there were hundreds of men that I helped in the last 20 years to come forward in their trade. That's my time, I'm sure. To come forward into this trade and become true to life journeymen who, as they described, actual experts. I celebrate Stevens and Smith's movements. It's the right direction to go. I don't know that they're there yet. He says maybe next year, but I know that the reality is most of the contractors in this town that are bidding work don't have anything going on like that. And what they have is much more of what I dealt with 20 years ago, where every man for himself fighting to learn something, because if you don't know it, you're not worth it. And if you do know it, then you could have my job. So I don't want to share nothing with you. And that is a horrible way for the trade to go forward and learn how to become tradesmen. The flip side is they come in at 18, and by 22, they're a journeyman. They know stuff. And they've got their whole career to continue to learn like I did. But they know something, and they're valuable, and they're tradesmen that are getting all of it. Don't put us in a place where the only way we can learn our trade is to beg, barter, and steal it from someone else so we can stay employable and still not know anything 20 years into the career.
Thank you so much.
I'll take questions, and I apologize.
Is there any questions from the council at this time?
It's a great community we live in, guys. This would be a good thing for our community.
Can you please just state your address for the record, please?
Oh, I apologize. My name is Christopher Anderson. I live at 4720 Birmingham Court. Do I need to write it down or anything?
If you could write it down.
I'd be happy to. I apologize. This will be good for our community. I can give you my number.
We do also have a second microphone, so if anyone is ready to come up and testify, may do so as well.
Good evening, Chairman Bowers and members of the Lincoln City Council. I'm Todd Wilchin here tonight, representing the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce. The address is 1131 Lincoln Mall, Suite 100. I'm here tonight to testify in opposition to the proposed ordinance creating a bid preference for apprenticeship utilization. I'd like to extend my appreciation to Chairman Bowers for meeting with myself and other chamber staff members back in December to review our concerns and the concerns expressed by our members. As we continue working through this complicated issue and discussing it with our members, we still believe creating a bid preference for apprenticeships through government contracting to be problematic for a number of reasons. First, the Lincoln area has a very limited number of apprenticeship training programs or participating employers recognized by the U.S. Department of Labor. I handed out the current list that was provided by the State Director of the United States Department of Labor. As you will note, only 9 sponsors and 13 employers are currently recognized in the Lincoln area, most of which are involved in electrical trades. This indicates the concerns we've heard from local paving contractors are valid. They would be at a competitive disadvantage to construction firms based in Omaha. Second, The unintended consequence of the ordinance would be the creation of an unfair mandate for firms doing business with the city. While mid-sized and large firms may have the resources to meet the requirements, small and minority-owned firms would not have the resources to overcome the additional regulatory burden imposed by the ordinance. These small disadvantaged businesses may not even attempt to do business with the city of Lincoln should this ordinance be enacted. Third is the negative fiscal impact this ordinance would have on infrastructure investment in our community. The Advisory Committee on Transportation met last week and learned projected construction cost escalation for 2021 and 2022 will be 8% for residential streets and 20% for new arterial roadways. If utilized, the 5% bid incentive has the potential to be an additional cost escalator, increasing the gap in funding to meet the city's infrastructure needs. The additional cost for this proposal should not be financed by existing revenues generated by property, sales, and wheel taxes or impact fees. Another funding source should be identified to fund this initiative if enacted. Lastly, we also have concerns that a single person at the city has not been designated to administer and enforce the ordinance similar to Omaha. It can be the purchasing agent, the diversity, equity, and inclusion manager, or the finance director. This oversight would be essential to ensuring the ordinance achieves the intended purpose without harming Lincoln businesses and taxpayers. The Lincoln Chamber is on record supporting apprenticeship programs more broadly. At the local and state level, we support appropriating funds to increase apprenticeship and workforce training programs. In fact, last week, we supported a legislative proposal, LB 1167, before the Nebraska Legislature's Appropriations Committee that would allocate $50 million to retain and enhance our state's workforce. The goal is to increase apprenticeship and workforce training programs across Nebraska, among other things. We really appreciate the council's willingness to continue working to improve the proposed ordinance. If a consensus is not reached with the parties involved, we would ask you to either pause for more dialogue or vote against the ordinance. Thank you for your time this evening, and I would attempt to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions from the council? I have one. You brought up something about LB 1167 and how that would bring $50 million to retain a workforce.
Yes.
So if a business in Lincoln wants to implement an apprenticeship program, there could be possible dollars to help assist them with that.
Yeah, and that would be through the Department of Economic Development.
Okay. So there would be dollars.
There would also be money allocated to the Department of Labor. There are a couple parts to that. There's the different programs, but essentially, if a business were wanting to utilize those program dollars, they would work with the state of Nebraska.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Todd.
Thank you.
No, go ahead. Good evening, council members. My name is Bob Caldwell. I'm Executive Vice President for NEBCO here in Lincoln, also representing our other companies, including constructors. Generally concur with many of the folks that have come forward, so I won't be redundant as to some of the opponents of the ordinance. I do appreciate several council members reaching out, our discussions, Mr. Chairman, regarding the proposal. My comments will be maybe a little more detailed, some things for you to think about as we move forward. As a general position, we think Lincoln has a rich tradition of being a low bid city. It's very transparent. It's easy to understand when they pull the bid tabs out, who's low, who's qualified, who wins. I think this would cause great concern among contractors to then determine, did they qualify, how'd they qualify. A lot of the bids, at least in our area, heavy highway construction, roads, asphalt, concrete, etc., is probably a little different than some of the speakers that you've talked to in different trades that maybe aren't the size of the projects that we do. So I think you should think about the different trades and how to separate your decision making, or to include or not include certain trades if you go forward. Because in heavy highway construction, We look at it as one technicality would be timeline. We have training programs that you can't imagine. Our employees stick with us for 20, 30, 40 years, and it's all done basically in-house. So we advance those training programs. We're very proud of those training programs. But day one, if this passes, we would be susceptible as one of the main contractors in the state of Nebraska to out-of-state firms coming in and bidding against work. And I guarantee you they'd have the shot at winning it with a 5% bid advantage. It would take us time. So I would suggest some sort of incremental timeline for implementation, 2 to 3 years, to give firms the ability to develop a program if you're going, and broaden that to in-house programs. We just wouldn't have it available day one, and we'd be at an immediate disadvantage. It would cost more for compliance for both us and the taxpayer. Just knowing that contractors that do work for the city, that cost gets included in our bid. So that would be additional cost for any project going forward. We have a concern that there should be some study, at least in our trade, for 10% of the man hours being performed by apprentices, assuming a larger definition. Most of our folks are in heavy construction equipment. Those people are not going to be apprentices that are operating heavy equipment for large jobs. And that is a little differentiation between some of the different trades. The fiscal impact on the city. I stood before you a long time ago when we talked about the quarter-cent sales tax for roads and streets, and I think I gave probably 100 speeches to different entities in the city. Very proud that we passed that as a city and are able to fund our roads. The example Mr. Brester gave about the cost differential, we could wipe out what we've raised per year if firms come into Lincoln and start bidding and winning on that 5% cost differentiation. So I'd like to see some fiscal study or looking at 2 or 3 or 4 jobs and seeing what that impact would be across our entire roads budget if firms started coming in and utilizing that to win. And then, you know, maybe even think about other ways to incentivize apprenticeship or training programs. I know the Chamber has different training programs. A lot of our trades have training programs. Maybe bid incentives, not the right solution. Maybe some other program that assists companies in establishing programs, maybe a partnership with Department of Economic Development to help firms implement the programs and leave our bidding process as a very transparent, low bid city. We do appreciate the willingness of the council to assemble some discussions after the fact on this, all the discussions we had before. We would really like to be, of course, involved in those discussions. And then to close, we understand these are difficult issues. Everybody getting up here speaking, I wanted to cheer for some, and I was like, that's a really great story. Everybody up here has the goal of quality construction, great training, safety, trying to get to that finish line of helping our teammates succeed. But there's different ways to do it, and there's some technical aspects to the bill that don't fit our trade, at least in heavy highway and roads, and we'd appreciate it if you would thoughtfully consider some of those comments. And I'd be open to questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions at this time? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to provide our testimony. My name is Juan Alvarado. I am a resident of Omaha, 3060 Titus Avenue. I'll be interested in nobody that's doing the construction that opposes came and testify, whether for or against. That's kind of weird. But anyway, they said that they wanted some studies, and I have one that was emailed to me, the University of California in Berkeley Labor Center. And this was pretty interesting. And I'm going to read it real quick here. According to the report, 39% of the construction workers' families are covered by some public subsidy. I joined this trade to be an independent person. I didn't join it to come and get subsidies from the government. Right now, you're passing a TIF incentive of $3.5 million, and if everybody would be watching those tax dollars like there are right now, it'll be amazing how you guys would save so much money. You know, we'd be willing to save money for buildings, but not from humans. Isn't that weird? So I'm part of the JTC board in Omaha. I'm very proud of it. 43% of it is minority. 43%. We represent 6 states, and we don't have that. Okay? We almost have two digits, almost 10% is African American. Okay? I raised 6 kids in Omaha, Nebraska with my wages. I was an apprenticeship. I come from the nursing field background. And I found construction because that was the theory. Construction is supposed to be a trade that you can provide for your family, not with the government. I would want to see some of their employees and go hand to hand and say, what do you make? Because if they don't have health insurance, we do. Okay? We should be rewarding people who take that risk. We're not talking about people who come and bid and have those high cost of labor. We need to be competitive. Nebraska needs to be competitive as a whole, not just as a city. I migrated from a country who I couldn't even support myself. My parents said, we're going somewhere. Thank God we left and we landed here. So for 10% that they're watching, we're not worth it as a community, as a human being, investing. Articulate agreements are working right now with Southeast Community College. Our apprenticeship get an associate's degree in applied science, not a certificate. Everybody wants to save the world, but nobody wants to pay for it. At some point, we have to pay for it. We make wealth for everybody. Don't forget that. We're not running charities, okay? We're not paving sidewalks. My grandma saved the money. Okay, we might pay for, give her the homie discount. No, there's like multi-billion-dollar contracts. And we're focusing on 5% is the incentive that they're getting. Shame on it if we can't afford 5%, and we have to look for the low bid. That's why residential in Nebraska, you have to be part of a subsidy to create houses. Let's at least respect what the city pays for. We're better than that. And shame on anybody who didn't bring an employee, sweats every day, gets cold outside, and comes to testify in front of all these people and say, I make a great living without the apprenticeship program. I want to see that. That's why I moved, and I'm staying. I'll fight anybody. This is a great life for me and my 6 kids. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions from the council at this time? Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Steve Bowen, 8934 Lamley Circle. I'm representing myself as well as the Associated Builders and Contractors. Apprenticeship training is a wonderful, dynamic, important thing. That's why our association is training over 350 students right now. There are many levels of certification, and that certification is usually met by the projects that the people are working on, but the training is the same, and it's great training. It's very important. But we stand opposed to this ordinance as it is, because it's too conflicting, it's too confusing. As a for instance, I wired this building. This is my project. Councilman Raybold, you might remember when your family did all those grocery stores. We did that on a design-build basis. So, in fact, I started my career as an apprentice electrician in the 60s. So, I agree that apprenticeship training is very, very important, but the ordinance as it is written is way too confusing. As for instance, I said I wired this building, but a general contractor hired me to do the electrical work. So even though my employees participated in an apprenticeship program, how does that help my employees if the general contractor didn't have an apprenticeship program? You kind of follow me? Okay. Most apprenticeship programs are in the electrical, mechanical, plumbing, carpenters, but not all general contractors, for instance, who usually submit their prime bids, have any apprenticeships. But maybe a lot of their subcontractors do. So I don't know how that fits into this ordinance the way it is written. Also, I would have questions since we have so many students right now. Some are in registered apprenticeship programs, some are not. They all could be in registered programs if that became necessary. It's a little bit of expense to do so, but if they're merit shop contractors, in other words, if they're not union members, does this ordinance still apply to them? And I would like to know that. How is it written right now? Can somebody answer that?
Usually we don't respond to questions, but I'll answer this one. Your question is, if a person's in an apprenticeship program that's not union sponsored, would it qualify?
Yeah.
Yes. This would apply for any Nebraska Department of Labor or U.S. Department of Labor registered apprenticeship program.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fine. So in effect, that would help my firm, and that would help the Associated Builders and Contractors firms who have apprentices registered. But I think we would still be against it. One of the reasons is, well, since I did this building, I think you guys owe me maybe $250,000, maybe $300,000 for this particular building. I also did the Hall of Justice, and I think you owe me about $350,000 on that one. And my favorite building was the jail, because it was the most challenging. And it was also the most expensive. I think you owe me almost $1 million on that building, if this thing was in place. I also did the parking garage out there. So this is a very, very complex issue that's going to create a lot of problems, and it'll create a lot of, well, it'll create a small bureaucracy to run it. And although we absolutely support apprenticeship programs, we think they are so important. That has been my life experience and many of my employees. I just don't think this is the right way to promote it. I think there's better ways to promote it, and I hope we can find better ways. I don't have anything else. Any questions?
Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you so much for coming down.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. My name is Jack Russell. I am the Policy and Research Coordinator for the Lincoln Independent Business Association, or LIBA. We're located at 620 North 48th Street, just for the record. And I'm here today to voice concerns our members have related to the proposed changes to the Municipal Code, Chapter 218. LIBA is supportive of apprenticeship training, and incentivizing programs could be a creative way to address some of the labor shortages that so many of our local businesses face. However, the language in this ordinance raises concerns for our local contractors and taxpayers. As written, this ordinance will raise cost. There'll be a logistical cost to the city to administer the program, adding a cost to taxpayers. Because of the regulatory burden, some companies may choose not to bid on projects because of the additional cost and red tape involved, thus reducing the number of bidders and competition for each project. Additionally, because of the incentives of this program, it is possible that the city would be awarding project bids not on merit or to the lowest responsible bidder, but by artificial requirements. All of these result in higher costs for our city and taxpayers. LIBA appreciates the council's willingness to sit down and develop amendments to make this more suitable for our local businesses. However, we feel an additional public hearing on this ordinance is necessary to ensure everyone has the chance to review the changes and provide feedback. We see no need to rush the passage of this ordinance. Allowing more time for review of the amendments and giving businesses a chance to see how this would affect them would show transparency and an interest in community involvement. Again, our organization supports apprenticeship programs and encourages their growth. but we fear that this ordinance will have unintended and negative consequences for our local contractors and raise costs on taxpayers. Thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to try and answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions for Mr. Russell? Okay, seeing none. Thanks so much for coming down. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this issue?
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, my name is Walt Brewer, 2455 West Van Dorn. I think I know a few of you. Been a long time general contractor in the Lincoln area. And I see a lot of sides. I see the union side. I had the distinct honor of being the youngest union carpenter in the United States of America because I was a journeyman at 16 years of age. I've seen the other side of the program too. There's always been the issue between unions, Omaha, do we pay, do we pay? What I want to say to you, I go back so far, we mentioned Stevens and Smith, I give them their first commercial project, for example. I even go back so far that on the old county building, I worked on the elevator that sat right out here in the middle of this new one. So the experience is my field. I have been on both sides of I've been on the union side, I've been on the open shop side. I've both sat on both programs, negotiating programs with a lot of very good people. We have a lot of fine union people. There's no question about it. We have a lot of fine open shop people. Now what I'm seeing in this program, and I just saw it in this morning's paper, I've not read the whole ordinance, it's ridiculous. This is not even well written. It's non-competitive. In Colorado, I did a lot of building in the mountains. They threw this stuff out because it was non-competitive, and it was mostly against the law in some cases. When you offer incentive programs, your out-of-state people will not come in. So I'm not going to take a position on either side, but this is a situation where the union has to work with the contractors, as we did in the old days, and negotiate good union wages. The non-union people have to also work with the unions if they want to be union. We all use union people. The open shop contractors, even in my last years of my career, I used mostly union. My dad was a strong union man, so there's nothing wrong with that. But this is not the time or place for this kind of negotiation the way I see it. And I don't want to see this thing pass the way it is because it's not well written, and you're going to end up in a courthouse. They threw a lot of these kind of things out in Colorado. I worked out there for quite a few years because it's non-competitive and it's not well written. And then the real case is you start another layer of bureaucracy by having the city run another program that we just flat don't need. A lot of people think contractors make a lot of money. Yes, we're fortunate at times. The average wage, a lot of people won't realize this, is 0.75% profit net. We're also in an industry that's the second that goes out of business to restaurants. So we're in a very difficult position. I think we've made a lot of strides in our labor negotiations over the years, but for the last 45 years, Lincoln has been pretty much open shop. Who's been training those people? It's been on the job. Ourselves, all companies want to train people, and we should pay a good, respectable wage. And even when we were in the union contracts, I paid above scale to get better people, more talented people. So I really implore you to put this on the table and get a negotiating group together that can write a bill, if there is such a bill, that makes sense to both parties and the city of Lincoln and the taxpayers. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you so much. Are there any questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you so much for coming down.
Samuel Lyon, Lincoln, Nebraska, address on file. First of all, I just want to say I am an apprentice. I am not, and I didn't grow up in an official apprentice program, but I took every opportunity that I could to find someone who knew more about what I wanted to learn than I knew, and asked them to help me learn what they could teach me, both in the classroom format and also hands-on. And I find that that is the best way that I have learned from all scopes, because it's so effective. Some have been more willing to teach me than others. As Mr. Anderson testified, some don't want to necessarily say what they know because they're a little bit afraid that if they know what you know, maybe then they'll get your job. And others know that when we help each other out, it makes us all better. And in my experience, the latter has been my experience, but I know that there are both out there. I want to celebrate tonight each of the apprentices here that have come tonight, and I think that there's not one of us who is not rooting for them, you know, after hearing them to succeed. And as they have testified, many are succeeding. And there's been apprentice programs for a very long time, for many years, that they've benefited from. And so I'm a huge proponent of the apprenticeship idea, whether it's in a recognized program by the government or whether it's just someone who knows more than you and is willing to take the time to teach you what they know. We are better when we do that. But that decision is not made in a vacuum, right? If the vote was, do we help these people continue on or not, it's easy if that's the only question. But it's not. There are some other things to consider, and so therefore it puts you in a difficult position, because at the end of the day, you're going to have to choose whether to move forward or not. But that's why you get paid the high dollars, right? That $25,000 a year is really coming in strong. 24,000. Sorry. I'm sorry. 24,000. So I just have 3 cautions for you, and several of them were mentioned already. My mind works in the unintended consequences realm. And many times those unintended consequences sometimes don't happen, but many times they do. So 3 cautions for you. One would be the taxes. It's been said that this is not going to cost taxpayers any more money. But I think others have testified that logically it will, right? Because we're going to subsidize those that have this program. So that's one way. It could cause other businesses, medium and small businesses, not to bid on a job, and their bid may have been lower. With absent from their bid, the higher bid is the only one remaining. Again, not that money is the only question, but it is a factor. And I know that all of you in a vacuum would not choose to vote to raise Lincoln's taxes. If it was in a vacuum, you wouldn't. But that's not the only consideration. There's other considerations to think about. The second is loss of jobs. Now, each of the apprenticeships here, I don't think any of them are in risk of losing that apprenticeship job if this doesn't pass. Because it's already happening, right? Both privately and union places have these apprenticeship programs, and they're working, and they're happy with them, and they have great workers because of those programs. But imagine the small to medium-sized business who, rather than say, we can't afford all the extra rigmarole and research and development of an official apprenticeship program, we're just not going to bid on that city project. And therefore, we're going to have to lay off a few workers. I would hate to see workers laid off because the business that they're in could not or decided not to bid on a job. Now, likely that's very few people, but it's possible. And thirdly would be the potential for strife and arguments within the industry. It wasn't long ago, and actually for several occasions, you've had tow truck drivers come in and argue that there's corruption within the bidding process. If this goes, you will likely have that sentiment continue on. And again, that's not a vote that any of you would choose in a vacuum. But again, this isn't a vacuum. So those are the three cautions I have. I would urge you to consider those and the ones that spoke on this and make a good choice. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Chris Merck, CHRISMERK. I am a carpenter apprentice for life, as Mr. Marshall has said, who is my mentor, by the way. He's a great man. I wouldn't have had that opportunity outside of working where I am. I was raised in a single-parent family. I'm not going to get into the details, and I really appreciate what the brothers and sisters said, but I came from a single-parent family where my mom worked 2 and 3 jobs, and I dropped out of high school because I was into to extracurricular activities and was going to get in trouble and needed to get a job, and it was either get a job or go to a DOL-approved pre-apprenticeship program at the Job Corps. This gave me my first introduction to trades and what those are. I didn't know nothing about a union at that point in time, but that DOL, that gold standard for apprenticeship training, had 2 instructors there that taught me how to be an efficient carpenter, but also what it meant to be union and how that works, how it's all self-funded, how we keep it in the family, how these contractors that we support, our partners, pay in on our behalf and help fund these programs. That's what I'd really like to come here to talk to you about tonight, personally. I've been studying the industry for a long time, and to be honest with you, there's some of the opposition that has been in my market, typically Omaha, that comes up and cuts my trade down. They pay carpenters cash with no deductions, checks with no deductions, to come in and do my work. And that's how they get to the bottom. This is the race to the bottom. I watched our wages stagnate for years. And by the way, we do heavy and highway as well. We got a $4.3 million project in Council Bluffs, Iowa. We have projects all over that we're bidding. So we do have those projects as well. But the race to the bottom for a carpenter, I watched stagnated wages for forever. And what this bill allows us to do is displace some of that discrepancy. A lot of times contractors are bidding at a low bottom dollar, but then knowing that there's change orders that come through at the end where they make up their differences. And we've seen this in the airport authority in Omaha, where they're just saying, give us your lowest bid. If you got change orders at the end, we don't really want to know about that, because it's all about selling it. And you got a hard choice to make. But the economics of funding people to buy houses and cars and support families, I don't know if I would have had that chance. In fact, I know that I wouldn't have had that chance. The economics of supporting our families and our neighbors is where we need to have our heart. The money comes and goes. And the contractors that I've heard tonight, they're reputable, and a lot of them said that they have opportunities to be part of these programs, these DOL gold standard programs. I'm just reinforcing your language, brother. That create these pipeways or these pipelines of apprentices and people that go out in the trade. Union apprentices aren't held to a standard other than if you don't show up, you don't get paid. We don't have all the other protections as of all the other unions in the trades. We don't have paid time off. We don't have all these other things. We get paid if we show up. And these folks that are showing up every day, that are going through these programs, can leave at any time, change their career, and go work for somebody that pays more. But right now, nobody's paying more. They're paying more because of the consumer price index that's obviously up. They're paying more because of this, and that they're just shortening the guy at the end that doesn't get paid.
1 minute.
I'll yield to any questions.
Are there any questions at this time?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Joey Killian,
Kielion, 1722 South 139th. Although I'm not a current member, excuse me, currently living in Lincoln, I did work in this community for many years. So I do appreciate all your time and all of the time of everybody here today to take care of this important matter. My mind is racing. I don't even know where to begin. I have so many things going through there. First of all, I guess the gentleman with the layoffs, if that company needed to lay off anybody, we would be more than willing to talk to anybody who gets laid off. We have positions available for them right now. Secondly, we are a federally recognized Department of Labor program with the carpenters, and we do concrete work in the state of Nebraska and Iowa, to the gentleman earlier. Also, all of our GCs in our organization all have registered apprenticeship programs, so if there are general contractors needed to do these projects, again, I have contacts and I'd be more than willing to share them with anybody. Let's see here. The gentleman from Brester, he also said that we need to train, that without training, basically we will die as Nebraskans. That I'd believe in that, and I appreciate him saying that. But at the same time, he does not want to approve this matter, which will incentivize and help people to create more training for Nebraskans. So it seems like they're kind of talking out of both sides of your mouth at that point. Heavy highway. There are already out-of-state contractors in this state currently doing work on heavy highway as we speak. So that is a moot point. The gentleman with the $1 million that is owed to him for the building down the street, wherever that may be, I believe if you read the ordinance, I believe it had a cap of up to $500,000. So he would only be entitled to $500,000 or less. And lastly, just a little anecdote in a way. Does anybody here drive a Ford Festiva?
I used to.
You did too? You had one?
I didn't think so. It is the most economical car that's out there. Just because it's the lowest dollar amount does not make it worth it. You get what you pay for.
Thank you so much for coming down.
Good evening, Lincoln City Council. My name is Sue Martin, 2012 South 13th Street. I'm here on behalf of the Nebraska State AFL-CIO. I wasn't going to testify, but I want to clear some things up. I think there's some confusion on what this ordinance actually does and doesn't do. First, this ordinance is not detrimental to local business because this ordinance does not eliminate any bidders from consideration, as some were led to believe. What it does do is give a 5% bid incentive when using apprenticeships in a sponsored apprenticeship program or an apprenticeship program that is state or federally registered. Apprenticeship is an industry-driven, high-quality career pathway where employers can develop and prepare their future workforce, and individuals can obtain paid work experience, classroom instruction, and a portable, nationally recognized credential. When we let these jobs, we have a commitment to ensure that the work is done on time and safely. In Nebraska, we're all about workforce, highly skilled workforce. As the Lincoln City Council, you must be mindful of taxpayer dollars. To save dollars, having the work done on time and at cost should be your biggest concern. We should be encouraging the use of apprenticeships and upskilling and skilling. Again, this is a bid incentive ordinance only. There is nothing in the ordinance that requires employers to use apprentices to get a bid on the job. There is nothing about union or non-union. There is nothing in the ordinance that says the work will go to businesses outside of Lincoln and Lancaster County. But most importantly, what this bill does is hold employers accountable to provide workers' compensation insurance and comply with the Nebraska Employee Classification Act to provide their employees a wage for their work and avoid wage theft. Even this is required by state statute. We know that this, even though this is required, I think someone had mentioned it earlier, by state statute, we know this still happens. And adding this language strengthens that, and we don't consider it being redundant. So with that, we fully support this ordinance.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item?
I won't take the 5 minutes. My name is Ron Palmquist. I live here in Lincoln at 7811 Maxine Drive. I work for a company called MMC Contractors. We have a shop up here on 301 Northwest 27th. We employ plumbers, pipe fitters, sheet metal workers. We really need your help in partnering with us for an apprenticeship program for many things. With or without this amendment, we will still be investing in our apprenticeships. I believe the apprentices in our program invest 10,000 hours, 5 years, 2,000 hours a year. And the apprenticeship is the method that we use to recruit and maintain this talent pool that we need. Because as you know, our workforce is not getting younger, it's getting older. And we need the apprentices, we need them desperately. And we need your help. I couldn't say it any better than all these other people, especially the apprentices themselves, about what apprenticeship does for molding character, to helping people understand business in your buildings. So again, anything that you can do.
601 West Peach Street. We got to train the next. It will hold people accountable. I'm a hammer, a screwdriver, so that's why we support.
Speak on this item.
704 Glen Arbor Circle. Bring that up and try to make it a union, non-union issue here in Lincoln. And what's not being said, a lot of people from Lincoln are building the workforce. Hastings, Grand Island, who help support me and my family. Why my wages and my apprentice be had on this? You know, those that say it was poorly written, or us here in Lincoln every day. What would it mean, Nebraska? So I would like to see this.
I'll through the apprentice.
6 years. Mom lives with me too. I couldn't do that working non-union. It wouldn't happen. It takes the union wage that I make and the benefits that I get to support my family the way that I do, and they rely on me and they depend on me. And when I gotta go to work in Omaha, I mean, I'm willing to do that because I need to work, but I would much prefer to stay here in Lincoln and work here in Lincoln. Why would I want to drive 60 miles when I can drive 6? So anything that helps me secure work here in Lincoln and work here in Lincoln, I'm for supporting. I don't really feel like I need to get deep into my testimony. I can if you guys want me to, but I mean, that's really about the important things that I feel I need to say. I mean, working in Lincoln is important to me, and if we can support our community and keep our guys here, not spending money to go work in another city, then that seems like the right thing to do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item? Anyone else that would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none. I really appreciate everyone who's come out to testify and provide public comment, from employers to people who've been through an apprenticeship program. I just want to repeat what I said earlier, and that's our workforce shortage is a major challenge to our businesses here in our state and here in our city. And part of that challenge is to promote apprenticeship programs. I'm thankful for those that shared their story. I'm thankful to those that shared their concern. Our city is currently lacking in this opportunity, and I look forward to working to bring this opportunity to the next generation of skilled workers in Lincoln. So thank you so much. With that being said, we'll go ahead and move on.
Do we need to make a motion?
Yes, we do.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we put this on pending, no date certain at this point, but with continuation of public hearing at that time when we bring it back again.
I'll second that.
Okay, introduced to put on pending, no date certain by Councilman McGinnis, seconded by Councilwoman Raybold. Any discussion at this time? Councilman McGinnis?
I think this is a great testimony of everybody being here, that everybody, I think that hopefully there's a middle ground on a lot of this. Hopefully we can get to something here that will work well for the city of Lincoln. And I think we can. I know there's been a lot of work behind the scenes done by Councilperson Washington and Councilperson Rabel, by everybody, because we've all had numerous conversations on this. So I would like to have a little bit of time to clear out some of the comments that were said tonight. I've learned a lot tonight, so I think it'd be good to have a chance to sit back and work on this and meet and see what we can come up with.
Any other comments? Councilwoman Washington?
Thank you. I was going to offer the same, well, slightly different motion to delay, but we do have a roundtable coming up, and I really look forward to having conversations with folks this week, later on, and if we need to carry on until the next week, I would like to have the time to take all of these ideas and these concerns and come up with some amendments or a new ordinance that does what we need it to do. This is important for Lincoln. We all know workforce development is critical.
Any other comments on Councilman McGinnis's amendment? I guess my comment would be, I would be concerned about putting it on pending no date certain. We clearly have a very engaged community that wants to take action on this and get resolution on this. So I would ask for a friendly amendment, if anyone is interested in making that motion on my behalf, to amend Councilman McGinnis's amendment to something that would be more palatable. I would say maybe 3 weeks.
I don't know, Mr. McGinnis, if you would find this a friendly amendment, but I was going to offer a motion to delay until March 21, public hearing and vote on that night.
I probably wouldn't take that as a
Okay.
as a friendly motion, but I just think that there's a lot to do here, and it may be 1 week. We may get together and figure this all out and have it done by next meeting. So that's why I'd like to kind of leave it out there until we can come to an agreement of some sort.
As long as we're working toward something.
I agree. As long we got to keep working on it.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman Ward. Nope.
I was just going to move officially that we move for date certain of March 21 with continued public hearing and action on March 21 to follow up on Councilwoman Washington's suggestion. Yes, thank you. A motion to amend. Yes.
Can we get a second to Councilwoman Ward's motion to amend Councilman McGinnis's motion to amend?
I just have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, we can't.
There's been several motions. So the first motion I had was from Councilman McGinnis.
Correct.
And there was a secondary motion made by Councilwoman Ward. I just wanted process-wise, I just want to make sure we're doing the right amendment.
Yep, that's correct. Councilman McGinnis introduced pending no date certain. Councilwoman Ward made a motion to amend that to March 21st, and it would just need a second. And I would second it, but I cannot as chair.
And I offered it as a friendly amendment and was turned down, so I'm willing to stand back and let one motion be voted on.
So are you seconding Councilwoman Ward's?
I'm confused by the override. Is this a second?
I don't think your motion was an official motion.
No, it wasn't, but I asked him if he would, and he said no. He wouldn't see it as friendly.
She made a motion to amend. That's what's
So the motion to, okay, so we can motion to amend a motion to delay.
Waiting for a second.
To keep the discussion going and clear up the process, I will second.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll have discussion about making the date certain as March 21st. Any comments on that?
I will go ahead and support, just to keep the discussion going and moving towards a resolution here. I will also support, however, if we're not finished by March 21st, another delay. So let's just move forward and see where we land.
Councilman McGinnis?
I have a quick question then. So we will have another public meeting on March 21st. And then if we're not ready, we'll delay it for another public meeting after that.
Depending on what the council decides.
Okay.
We could entertain that if Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
I just don't want.
Councilwoman Ward, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So one of the reasons especially Councilman McGinnis, I would suggest a date certain. This would be the third time, I believe, that we have delayed this. And I think 3 weeks is a sufficient period of time from now for us to roll up our sleeves and work on a compromise. And I want to recognize Councilwoman Washington for, organizing the roundtables this coming week. And they feel a little bit after the fact, but they're still really, really important. And so thank you for doing that. But I do think 3 weeks is an ample time because we have delayed this twice already. So that's one of the reasons I offered the March 21st date. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments? Councilwoman Raybold?
Well, I agree with Councilman Beckius. I think we want to keep this moving forward. We want to continue the discussion. The roundtable is very essential. I think we're going to be learning a lot more in the roundtable, and probably after that, we will post any of the changes that have been suggested that we can all agree on and give people additional time to read, review, study them, and then another opportunity to provide public comment on March 21st. I think that's a good idea. If we feel that we're not at a good place, that we can, move forward on this, I think we can certainly at that time request an additional delay. And I think it doesn't matter how many times we delay, we just want to get the process right. We want to get the policy right. We want to do what benefits and encourages apprentice programs in Lincoln. And it's worth taking the time, and it's worth listening to all the stakeholders.
Any other comments? I respect people. First of all, thank you to Councilman Ward for making the motion to amend it to a date certain. I just get a little nervous when we talk about continuing to delay when I think that we have a community that's ready for action and we have a process that's put in place in order to come up with a way to make this work. So I appreciate having the date certain for March 21st. It's been moved and it's been seconded. Any other conversation, discussion? Councilman Shob?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would appreciate the no date certain, and with that, we can always take it off the no date certain list at any time. So I understand the desire not to delay and move forward, but I also appreciate the fact that by putting the time constraints on it, I think that would make it feel a little bit rushed. I want to have an opportunity to talk and listen to everybody and talk and listen to everybody, rather than saying we have to make a decision by March 21st. If we get to that point, we delay again, then we delay the fourth or fifth time. I think no date certain, and if we get there before that, we can always pull it off the table then.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, so the motion that's on the table right now is Councilwoman Ward motion to amend Councilman McGinnis's motion, which would put this for a public hearing on March 21st with a vote.
And public hearing.
And public hearing.
Yes.
Need a public hearing.
Does that make sense? Okay, so let's go ahead and call the roll on Councilwoman Ward's motion to amend.
Raybold?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Shob?
No.
Ward?
Yes.
Beckius?
Yes.
McGinnis?
No.
Bowers?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-2.
Okay, now I got to go back to the main motion. And
As amended.
That has been amended. Any discussion on the main motion?
Wait a second. A little clarification. We just amended the motion. We just passed in a motion to put this on pending until a certain date. So what's the main motion?
Well, what we voted on just now was to change your motion to March 21st. So we still have to vote on the motion that you brought forward.
Makes sense?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, which was Councilman McGinnis's.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yep.
Perfect. Any further discussion on the main motion? And again, this would put it as a public hearing and a vote on March 21st. Seeing no further discussion, let's call the roll.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Shob?
Yes.
Beckius?
Yes.
Bowers?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you back here on March 21st.
And we'll go ahead and move on to the next item.
That concludes Section 7 of our agenda. Next item on our agenda is Section 8, Ordinances, third reading and related resolutions. Item 8A is approving an addendum to the lease and operating agreement for the Pinnacle Bank Arena between the city
I guess just stick around. This is a good one.
and the Board of Regents
Go ahead.
of the University of Nebraska, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded by Councilman McGinnis. Any discussion? Discussion?
Nope.
Okay, seeing none,
No.
let's call the roll.
Ward,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 8B is approving the agreement between the City of Lincoln and PennLink LTD to build a new criminal justice information system for the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded by Councilwoman Raybold.
Ready to vote on
Any
this?
discussion? Seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Schob,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Amendment on
Yes.
this one?
Beckius,
Yes.
Bowers.
Did we have an amendment on this one?
Yes, we did.
No?
No.
Okay.
No, we did
Yes.
not.
This is like the one we had earlier, but different, right? The Segis one we had earlier?
This is still CGIS. This is just the other piece of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
We're
fine.
to include
We're fine.
Exhibit A as an attachment of
Nope, we're
substitute
fine.
agreement, right?
Yeah, that went to the first one.
Motion to amend 22R. R.
Okay, let's vote on this thing.
Would you like me to recall the vote?
Oh, we're only missing one.
Yep, Bowers.
Just Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. That concludes our ordinance's third reading and related
That was
resolutions.
a long night for that, wasn't it?
Section 9. First readings are items 9A through 9C. Section 10. Ordinance's first readings are items 10A through 10I. Pending list date certain, items 11A. Pending list is item 12A.
Okay, tonight is an open microphone session. Anyone wishing to address the council on a matter that is not on this agenda and not planning to appear on a future agenda may do so at this time. Individuals again are allowed a total of 5 minutes to speak, regardless of the number of topics. For the month of February, this is our last meeting. Just please come up, state your name and your address, and you'll have 5 minutes to address the council. Is there anyone that would like to address the council?
It's Jean.
Good evening, council members. My name is Louis Bratz III. I'm a Lincoln resident, homeowner, father of 3 wonderful kids, married to my wonderful wife she'll kill me when I get home, for over 20 years. I can't remember the exact years anymore. I'm here not because I want to be. In fact, most of you up here know that I'm very uncomfortable in these kinds of situations because I'm not any of y'all. And what I mean by that is y'all are good with the language and the suits and ties and going about things in some aristocratic way. And me, I'm just a common working man that just works in the gutter, has lived in the gutter, and continues to be in the gutter every day. But what I'm coming to talk to you about is something of great importance and fear of mine. In the years that I have been doing the volunteer work that I have been doing, as an individual who grew up in a home where food was not always readily available for myself and my brothers and sister, where we watched our parents choose who was eating and who was drinking, that was interesting. It has been one of the things I've done even when I was running for city council or when I wasn't, that I continuously worked for the nonprofits and the volunteer organizations in this city distributing food. And I have to be honest in telling all of y'all that we are on a slow path towards failure. I speak not for any of the nonprofits, but I could tell you that I've actually participated, helped, and volunteered continuously for 3 different ones over the last 3 years. One of them I'm still doing to this day through the whole COVID thing. We took about 3 weeks off to figure out what we were going to do. I deliver to people that are shut-ins. I go pick up deliveries from grocery stores and bring them to our site, and then I sit there and make sure they all get spread up. And the story I'm going to tell you, or the overarching story, is the same. And here's what it is. We are getting less and less from the people that supply us, whether it be restaurants, grocery stores, the university, nursing homes, hospitals. We're getting less. And through this pandemic, we have started to see, before the child tax credit ended, more. We're going from seeing about 50 to 60 people per week to 75. Now we're at about 100. That's at one site. And with that 100 and that lack of food coming in, that means we have to separate out less to the more people that are coming. That's what we have to do. What we have to do is we have to look at parents that are coming through with their children in the back of the car and say, this is what we got because we're splitting everything equally. And I'm sorry, but this week we didn't get poop. And so we don't have much to give y'all. This is unsustainable. This is unsustainable where we're at. And I know that we're all, well, not all, but many of us are raising thousands of dollars on Give to Lincoln Day and et cetera, et cetera. But we also have neighborhoods that are sitting here trying to supplement their own neighborhoods' foods through little free fridges. We got the folks doing Everett, who used to be Feed the People. We got FoodNet, we got Food Bank, we got Catholic Social Services. And they're all competing too, which is maddening to me. We're literally slicing each other's throats as nonprofits. If I am going to a store and picking up food, there is another organization that's coming, and it used to be split half and half.
1 minute.
Thank you. It's not like that anymore. Now it's get there, grab it. We're literally slicing each other's throats, and that's before we even help anybody. So I'm here to ask y'all something that I could have brought in a bunch of reports, a lot of things about how cities and states across this country have been implementing a measure and shown you about the economic impacts and the ecological impacts. But frankly, I could care less about any of that. I'm here because of the moral impact. And what that would be is that this state, and I'm not asking for y'all to do it immediately. Lord knows you guys don't do anything immediately. I'm not trying to be rude in that. You take your time. But I'm asking you, in 6 months from now, a 6-month window, September is Hunger Awareness Month. And it would be a step for all of y'all on Hunger Awareness Month to come forward and stay in this city. If you're a grocery store, you're a restaurant, you are the university at the stadium or Pinnacle Bank, you're a nursing home, you're a business that provides food. You are no longer able to take that food at the end of the night that you didn't sell or you didn't get rid of and throw it away. You have to give it to the organizations here that are taking care of the most vulnerable. Because to be honest with all of y'all, this idea that the poor and somehow the people that are starving are little kids that are covered in dirt or look like, let's be honest here, white trash like me. Let's be honest here. We're not it. And I could tell you all of that. We're not it no more. Nowadays, I'm seeing more of people that look exactly like all of you with your suits and ties coming from the city building from the state buildings, coming from the universities, coming from the hospitals, coming from being employed at some of y'all's businesses. I'm seeing young people and old people and everything in between.
We've
And
hit
if
the
we are gonna
5
sit
minute.
here,
We've hit the 5 minute mark, and to
I
be
understand.
respectful of everyone else, if you could wrap it up.
I apologize, I'm wrapping it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
If we are going to sit here and talk about being a community of opportunity, then we have to address the fact that food and water are rights, and that Martin Luther King said, why should there be any hunger and deprivation in any land, in any city, at any table, when man has the resources and the scientific know-how to provide all mankind with the basic necessities of life? There is no deficit in human resources. There is a deficit in human will. I challenge all of y'all to show your will in combating this problem in this city. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council at this time?
Yes, thank you. Samuel Lyon, Lincoln, Nebraska, address on file. Congratulations. Looks like we made it. 716 days since the beginning of the emergency declaration powers claimed by the mayor, and it's nice to see we finally get the full use of the People's Room back today. It's the first time that I've witnessed this in almost 2 years. The candy cane streamers have been removed from the chairs. The garbage bags removed, and it's nice to see it back to the way it was 2 years ago. Seems like just yesterday. And another benefit, I'm seeing faces that I haven't seen in 2 years, and it's nice. So, 2 weeks to bend the curve, we missed it by that much. McGinnis, it's nice to see you back. Haven't seen you for a while. You represent my district, and Councilperson Beckius, you represent me as well, being an at-large member of the council. So what I would like to know from each of you is, because both of you missed the controversial and currently being contested fairness ordinance vote, that you were absent, was it simply because you had other plans? Or did you purposefully avoid the meeting so you wouldn't have to go on record and state your position either in favor or opposed to this highly contentious ordinance? I haven't heard from either you, Councilman Beckius, or McGinnis on whether you've stated you're in favor or opposed to the contested ordinance that passed 2 weeks ago in your absence. But I have heard that, Councilman McGinnis, you have been avoiding media inquiries regarding your position on the issue. And now it's concerning to me, especially you, Councilperson McGinnis, because I have noticed a pattern of your absences on uncomfortable votes. And there are rumors that you again avoided the vote 2 weeks ago for the same reason. Now, if either of you are avoiding votes that make you uncomfortable, as your constituent, I would find that inexcusable behavior. Granted, $24,000 is not a lot of money to make those difficult votes, but you campaigned to be a representative for me and for the people of Lincoln. And so, again, if things happen, and we understand that, you can't be expected to be at council 52 weeks a year. You have vacations and you have lives, and that's reasonable. But to avoid one specifically because you don't want to go on the record, I think would be too much. So I'll ask you, as my representative, will you state your position either in support or opposed tonight since you were both absent for the meeting and everyone else stated their position on the council, and you were absent and unable to that, will you state it tonight, either opposed or in favor of the ordinance that passed 2 weeks ago, and settle once and for all where you stand on this issue?
I'd just like to point out, I would like to point out that for public testimony, public comment, we're here to listen to your concerns.
Yep.
So thank you, Mr. Lyons.
Thank you, and I did state my concerns. It is an opportunity for you to state publicly where you are opposed or in favor, and I would assume such an important ordinance, you've contemplated it and you've decided where you stand, and so this is your opportunity to do that. You can, of course, refuse. You can listen and not speak to me as a constituent. If you can refuse to do that, both of you, but that in itself would be an indication of the rumors that we're hearing. So, as the council wraps up, this is your opportunity to choose how you will respond, and I eagerly await that response. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming down. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council at this time? Jimmy Light.
Hey, it's been a while. Yeah. Right? Darkness just can't comprehend the light. Trust that. Yeah, it's an anniversary for us all. I started my activism about a year ago. Also got into Hex, cryptocurrency. I celebrated my anniversary on Bob Marley's birthday. Just landed on that day. And I just so happened to be in California, and I hear this recording going on in the airport. It says, federal law to wear a mask, right? And I'm like, that's not federal law. The Bill of Rights is federal law. The supreme law of the land is the Constitution. So it made me realize what policy is actually doing. It's infringing upon the line of the actual American spirituality, which is the Constitution. In a union, that would be your contract, right? In John 1:1, the word, in the beginning was the word, God and the Word are one, and yeah, you know, and that's the root of John 1:1, right? In school, they give you the preamble. They give you the root of the Declaration of Independence. And from there, you can build your tower. It also exposes the infringements, and that it shows that someone above the mayor is pressuring our elects. Our mayor, and in California, it's the exact same thing. Pressuring our elects and playing the citizens on the ignorance of their education. Because it is in violation of the First Amendment, right? It's a taxation on your freedom to assembly and your freedom of speech. And it's also specifically in violation of your 13th Amendment right. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude unless duly convicted of a crime. See, the intention there of that policy is to get the businesses to put the masks on the citizen. So that is against the law. That's involuntary servitude right there, unless duly convicted of a crime. Because we want bad people to be a slave to the justice system, right? Or justice. So that was my experience. Going across the First Amendment audit, they called the cops on me, wouldn't put my mask on. Dang it. And guess what? They couldn't arrest me because I didn't commit a crime. So, for the end of Black History Month, what did our big melanated kin come to this earth to show us? They led by an example. They sat in knowing they are perfectly legal. I Rastafari. Kidahamawe Haile Selassie, the prime of creation, Christ in a new flesh. I live African history every single day of my life. Rastafari saved my life. And to my heroes, we got a lot of work to do because politics has infected all of our lives. Even our drinking water. Lady that came up has lung problems with the construction. We've allowed this safe levels of chemicals into our drinking water. And you can go check the report at home from 2019 till now. That's when I started paying attention to the water chemicals. And I addressed the council a while ago about the chemical atrazine.
1 minute.
Atrazine is a chemical runoff in the water that turns amphibians gay. What kind of long-term effects you think that has on the human brain? We don't got a problem with the LGBTQ+ you can trust. We have many rainbow friends. What we do got a problem with is that big business moving in here, dumping its harmful chemicals upon our sacred land. It's disgusting, it's sick, and it's a well thought out, carefully executed systemic plan drafted by the same whack individuals who low-key took a stab at our backs with the NSSM 200 declassified report. Henry Kissinger and his constituents are pushing for the global population control. The kiss of death delivered by the betrayer of man in 1974. They Judas by any means necessary to soften docile the U.S. citizen, specifically targeting the blacks, the minority, the vulnerable, and women. Microaggression with division, sweep it across our nation. Between Monsanto and Comcast, you know it's easy to brainwash the sheep and poison the plantation. Any questions?
Seeing no questions, thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
I got one more. Sorry. One more thing. I'm sorry, I won't take up too much of your time. To sit in and lead by an example, this is how we do it.
No.
Inspector Parker.
Free the herb, baby. Rastafari, Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the Black Messiah.
Bye, Jimmy.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, moved and seconded by Councilwoman Raybold. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Beckius,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes, please.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
All right. Have a good night, all.
Thanks.
You know.